classical sounds from the pianist Simon Mulligan.
I'm a classical concert pianist. I'm very serious, and I say do your scales and Hanon and Pishner, and it's very important. But at the same time, I've always enjoyed improvising and relaxing and equally concentrating in the jazz world and other genres. My mum and dad and I, we lived in Ealing, West London, and our first house had an elderly lady who taught piano next door, and she realised that I could do all this weird stuff on the piano that she thought I was having lessons and I wasn't, and I was 3 years old. It was all rather nauseating, and my parents locked me in the cellar for the next few years, and devil child that I was, and they let me get on with my playing. They never pushed me with it, but I enjoyed working at my own pace. And while I was having lessons with this lady, my great aunt at the time had an antique shop, so she would often come to the house with great piles of dusty sheet music, and she'd say, "Here you are, Simon," and there'd be mostly Victorian sort of parlour songs and novelty things, but lots of classical and pop music of the day, anything from Scarlatti to Cliff Richard and Scott Joplin and John Denver and anything, all in music form. So I loved sort of I don't know, like hoovering it up or vacuuming it up, like just as much as I could with the smaller hands, and I started improvising if I couldn't stretch the chords or the notes. So if I couldn't play that, couldn't play an octave, I played it in sixths. And Liszt's Second Hungarian Rhapsody, I thought this is a bit crazy in C sharp, so I put it into C minor, which is much easier, but cheating, of course. So I enjoyed making pieces that were beyond my technical ability at the time, easier to play, and yeah, there we are.
So in some ways you were getting off the page just to get around certain technical facilities.
Yeah, because I would simplify stuff, and that's when I was studying at the Royal Academy of Music. From when I was 14, then I sort of I then had to learn all the real notes and all the tricky stuff, and stuff like Rachmaninoff's Second Concerto that it's got all those lovely tunes. Suddenly you have to learn all the bits in between. It's like, oh golly, So yeah. So yes, I've enjoyed looking at the piano music world and all music world from all sides all the time. Yeah. There we are.
Are there any pieces that you might have learned in the classical realm and then also have a jazz piece and you're like, they have the same harmony, or that these pieces seem like very connected?
Yes. Well, we know lots of music bridges that gap, blurs the boundaries, all those phrases, and like I recorded a lovely intermezzo of William Walton from his Henry V suite, and there's a case in point where I knew the that's not exactly the string writing in the orchestra, but it's a lovely, recognisable jazz chord sequence, and so I did an arrangement. I do an arrangement with my quartet, and I scored it up for the orchestra I put together for that Sony record, using, and then I found out that Joe Lovano and others had done their own versions of it, and so I like that when it can be done tastefully. I was listening to the Star Wars soundtrack last night. I might have been building some Lego Star Wars, and there's obviously the wonderful John Williams soundtrack, but there are many rock bands that take the Imperial theme and, you know, it sounds great. You know, it's the harmonies, and it works in many styles. So.
But you often find yourself kind of in two other worlds for the most part then.
Yeah, I don't. I used to. I'm getting asked more and more in recital to do a classical first half and a jazz second, or certainly all classical, and then I'll end with a jazz. And my arrangement of Rhapsody in Blue, Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue, I think is a lovely example which appeals, I hope, to both sides. And I don't really muck around with that. I play the whole piece. I don't abridge it, and I try and play the orchestra part as well at the same time, and put in the, you know, the whip, and I'm working on my own Bernstein arrangements now for the centenary, where I mean, Bernstein, I think, is fantastic, of course, and what a genius of making those harmonies appealing to everybody. Yeah, so I think good music is good music, and we've heard that said before. But you know, we know what we mean by that, and so there shouldn't really be a line drawn between the genres. We'll see what happens.
Bye.